You know what's strange? We talk about nirvana like it's this beautiful, peaceful destination, this ultimate goal of Buddhism. But if you actually read the ancient texts, if you listen carefully to what the Buddha said, there's something deeply unsettling about it. The word nirvana literally means blown out, like a candle flame extinguished, gone, ended. And when you look at how Buddhist scriptures describe this state, they use words like cessation, extinction, the ending of becoming. So here's the question that makes a lot of Buddhists really uncomfortable. Is nirvana just a spiritual way of talking about death? Before we go any further, if this kind of deep philosophical exploration interests you, hit that subscribe button, because we're going to dive into ideas that most people avoid. And stick around until the end, because the answer to this question might be stranger than you think. Let's start with what makes this question so uncomfortable. In the Udana, one of the oldest Buddhist texts, the Buddha describes nirvana like this. There is that dimension where there is neither earth, nor water, nor fire, nor wind, where there is neither this world nor another world, neither sun nor moon. I call it neither coming nor going, neither standing still, nor being born, nor dying. It is without foundation, without continuation, without support. This is the end of suffering. Neither being born, nor dying. Without continuation. The end. If you're honest, doesn't that sound a lot like nothing? Like the void? Like what we'd call death? And it gets more unsettling. The Mahaparinirvana Sutra talks about the extinction of craving, the extinction of hatred, the extinction of delusion. Extinction, that's a strong word. When something goes extinct, it doesn't exist anymore. The Diamond Sutra goes even further, saying that enlightened beings have no notion of a self, no notion of a being, no notion of a soul. If there's no self, no being, no soul, then who exactly is experiencing this nirvana? This isn't just theoretical confusion. In the early days of Buddhism, this question became a real crisis. There are records from ancient texts describing monks who, after hearing the Buddha's teachings about the end of suffering and the release from existence, took their own lives. They thought, if nirvana is the end of suffering and the end of becoming, why wait? The situation got so serious that the Buddha had to explicitly add a precept forbidding suicide. Think about that. The founder of Buddhism had to clarify that his teachings weren't an invitation to end your life. That tells you something about how his message could be interpreted. Now, before anyone gets worried, let me be clear. This isn't what Buddhism teaches, and we're going to unpack why. But we have to be honest about why this confusion exists in the first place. Here's where it gets philosophically intense. The great German philosopher Schopenhauer studied Buddhism extensively, and he concluded that it was essentially a sophisticated form of nihilism, a philosophy of negation. He wasn't being dismissive, actually. He thought Buddhism had figured out a profound truth, that existence is suffering, and the only real solution is to negate existence itself. Friedrich Nietzsche took it further, criticizing Buddhism as a life-denying philosophy that turned away from the world rather than embracing it. These critiques sting because there's something to them. When you look at how nirvana is described in Buddhist texts, it's almost always in negative terms. It's not this, not that. Not suffering, but also not pleasure. Not existence, but also not non-existence. Not self, but also not no self. It's like trying to describe a color to someone who's been blind since birth. Every description fails because language itself is built on the concepts that Nirvana supposedly transcends. The Lankavatara Sutra captures this frustration perfectly. Words and discriminations have nothing to do with Nirvana. Nirvana is the realm of the wise. In other words, if you can talk about it, it's not Nirvana. If you can conceptualize it, you've already missed it. But that leaves us in a strange position. How do we distinguish between the peaceful extinction of Nirvana and just extinction? Let me share a story that deepens this mystery. There's a famous account of a Zen master named Yamada Mumon who was asked by a student, "Master, what happens after death?" The master replied, "I don't know." The student was shocked. "But you're a Zen master." Yamada Mumon smiled and said, "Yes, but I'm not a dead Zen master." This story is often told to show humility, but there's something deeper here. If Nirvana is what happens after the complete extinction of the self, then the only people who truly know what it is can't tell us. They've gone beyond language, beyond concepts, beyond the ability to report back. It's like asking someone to describe what it's like to be unconscious. By definition, there's no one there to experience it. But wait, Buddhism also talks about living Buddhas, enlightened beings who walk among us. The Dalai Lama is considered one. There are stories of monks who achieved nirvana and continued teaching for decades. So clearly, nirvana isn't just physical death. There's something else going on. This is where we need to get precise about what Buddhism actually means by death. In the Visuddhimagga, a comprehensive manual of Buddhist practice, there's a crucial distinction made between the death of the body and the death of the defilements. Physical death is when your body stops functioning. It happens to everyone, enlightened or not. But the death of defilements, the death of greed, hatred, and delusion, that's what happens in nirvana. The Buddha himself made this distinction clear. In the Mahavacchagotta Sutta, a wanderer named Vacchagotta asks the Buddha what happens to an enlightened person after death. The Buddha refuses to say they exist after death, but also refuses to say they don't exist. He doesn't say they both exist and don't exist, and he doesn't say neither exists nor doesn't exist. Vacchagotta is completely confused. The Buddha then tells him a story about a fire. When a fire goes out, would you say it went north, south, east, or west? No, those questions don't apply. The fire has simply gone out. In the same way, asking what happens to an enlightened being after death is asking the wrong kind of question. Here's what's radical about this. The Buddha is saying that the very framework of existence versus non-existence doesn't apply to nirvana. It's not that you die and become nothing. It's not that you die and become something. The whole concept of you as a separate, continuous entity that could either exist or not exist, that's what dissolves. Let me share another story that illuminates this. There was a Zen master named Dogen who wrote, "To study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by myriad things." Notice the progression. First, you investigate what you think you are. Then, through that investigation, you realize there's no solid, permanent you to find. And when that illusion drops, suddenly you're not separate from the world anymore. You're actualized by everything around you. This isn't nihilism. It's not saying nothing matters or nothing exists. It's saying that what you think of as you, this separate, solid, continuous identity, is the illusion. When that illusion ends, it might feel like death to the ego, but it's not the death of consciousness itself. It's more like waking up from a dream. When you wake up, does your dream self die? In one sense, yes, the dream character stops existing. But you, the consciousness that was dreaming, you're more awake than ever. The Heart Sutra, one of the most important texts in Buddhism, has this famous line, "Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form." It's not saying everything is nothing. It's saying that what appears as solid, separate things are actually processes, temporary formations that arise and pass away. Your sense of self is one of those formations. When it dissolves in nirvana, it's not that you cease to exist. It's that you stop identifying with this one particular pattern and recognize yourself as the whole field of awareness. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Zen master, explained it beautifully. He said, "The wave does not need to die to become water. She is already water." You are not a separate wave trying to become the ocean. You already are the ocean, mistakenly identifying with one particular wave. Nirvana is realizing this truth. The wave doesn't die. It recognizes it was never just a wave to begin with. But let's be honest about something difficult here. This explanation, as beautiful as it sounds, might still feel like a kind of death. If there's no more you, as you currently know yourself, if your personality, your memories, your preferences, your fears, your dreams, if all of that is recognized as temporary formations rather than who you fundamentally are, isn't something dying? The ego might be an illusion, but it's the only thing you've ever known yourself to be. There's a reason why, in many Buddhist traditions, the path to enlightenment is sometimes called the Great Death. Zen Master Hakuin wrote, "Die while alive and be completely dead. Then do whatever you will. All is good." This is ego death, the death of the false self. And make no mistake, even though it's not physical death, it can be terrifying. It's the death of everything you thought you were. Here's where the modern understanding of consciousness might help us. Neuroscience has shown that what we call the self is actually a construct, a story the brain tells to organize information. Studies of people who've had profound meditation experiences, near-death experiences, or psychedelic experiences often describe something remarkably similar to what Buddhist texts describe. They report the self dissolving, boundaries disappearing, a sense of merging with everything. And contrary to what you might expect, most describe it not as death, but as the most alive they've ever felt. Roland Griffiths, who studied psilocybin experiences at Johns Hopkins, found that people who had ego dissolution experiences didn't describe it as dying. They described it as encountering a reality more real than ordinary consciousness, a perspective broader and more encompassing than their usual self-centered viewpoint. One participant said, "I died, but I was more alive than ever." Maybe that's the key to understanding this paradox. What dies in nirvana isn't consciousness itself. It's not awareness or experience. What dies is the narrow, contracted, defensive sense of being a separate self in opposition to the world. And when that dies, what remains is consciousness freed from constant self-reference, awareness no longer filtered through the anxious question, What does this mean for me? The Buddha himself experienced this and taught for 45 years after his enlightenment. Clearly, there was someone there, teaching, responding to questions, adapting his message to different audiences. But Buddhist texts describe him as having laid down the burden of the self. He functioned in the world, but without the suffering that comes from identifying with a separate self that needs to be defended, inflated, and perpetuated. There's a beautiful passage in the Itivuttaka where the Buddha says, "There is, monks, an unborn, unbecome, unmade, unconditioned. If there were not that unborn, unbecome, unmade, unconditioned, there would be no escape from the born, the become, the made, the conditioned." This is crucial. Nirvana isn't the end of everything. It's recognizing something that was never born and therefore cannot die. Some traditions call it Buddha nature, original mind, the unborn. It's the awareness that witnesses all experience, but is not itself conditioned by experience. So here's the truth that Buddhists might not talk about, not because it's secret, but because it's so easily misunderstood. Nirvana does involve a death. It is the death of the ego, the death of the illusion of separation. And that can feel absolutely terrifying. Your whole life, you've been this character, this personality, this bundle of preferences and fears. Buddhism is asking you to see through that, to let it go, to die before you die. But, and this is the crucial part, that death reveals life. Not life after death, but the life that was always here, hidden beneath the ego's constant noise. When the wave realizes its ocean, the wave doesn't disappear. It relaxes into what it always was. The question, is nirvana death, comes from the ego, from the sense of self that's afraid of its own dissolution. And here's the final paradox. That's the only thing that needs to die for you to discover what you truly are. Not a thing at all. Not an entity that exists or doesn't exist, but the open, aware space in which all experience arises. Shunryu Suzuki, the Zen teacher who brought Zen to America, said something profound. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. The expert mind, the ego mind, the mind that thinks it knows what it is, that mind is already dead to possibility. It's trapped in its own concepts. Real life, vibrant life, the life beyond death and birth, that happens when you let go of expertise, let go of knowing, let go of being someone. So is nirvana death? Only if you think you're the thing that dies. But if you look closely, has that thing ever really existed in the first place? Or has it always been a story, a useful fiction, a dream from which you can wake? I can't answer that for you. No one can. Even the Buddha, when asked directly about the ultimate nature of nirvana, often remained silent. Because any answer keeps you in the realm of concepts, and nirvana is what remains when concepts fall away. But I can tell you this, the fear that nirvana is death, that fear is natural. It's the ego's last defense. And maybe that fear is exactly what needs to be seen through. Not by forcing yourself to stop being afraid, but by looking directly at who is afraid. If this exploration opened something in you, if it made you curious or uncomfortable or both, that's exactly where the path begins. Share this video with someone who's not afraid of difficult questions. Leave a comment with your own thoughts, and subscribe for more content that challenges what you think you know. Because sometimes the most important questions are the ones we're afraid to ask. And sometimes the answers we find aren't answers at all, but doorways to something we can't name, but can learn to live.